Senate Bill 140 was passed here in Montana in 2019, and its goal is to reiterate public schools' obligation to identify students with dyslexia and provide the necessary evaluations and screenings and tools that they need to know to learn how to read. So I spoke with Kelly Fedge Dubose of Decoding Dyslexia to see how this law is shaping out 3 years later.
Walked around the state and met with the smaller rural schools
Mhm.
because it was way different in Wolf Point and Malta than it is in Bozeman, or entirely different. Or in Dillon, it's completely different than Libby.
Yeah.
So those things are really important to know your community to be able to adapt to it. But
Mhm.
as far as having systemic change, it makes it very difficult because you can't have a blanketed kind of information go out.
Mhm.
And so when I was working with Elsie Arntzen, the state superintendent, I'm like, don't we just have an email blast that we can do to everyone and say, hey, the law got passed, let's do this, come on, get yourself together, and get training? Well, no, the answer is no, they don't do that. But they do have some reports that go out. Okay. And so they did reports, and I worked with Dylan, who's the PR person, to help with that report. Well, the report, again, it's like this thick, and everyone, a superintendent, an administrator, they get that. What are they doing? They're just, they don't have time to read that. They're out trying to make sure the kid has Wi-Fi, the kids have food. They're coming to school not prepared, just physically and emotionally. So that was like hit and miss. So that's one of the reasons why I kept going and talking personally to the schools. And the easiest way and the most receptive way, I guess, is that rural schools, they have the ability to make decisions quicker because sometimes they're the principal, they're also the special ed person, and they're the superintendent. They're all in one. Okay. And so they're used to like shifting hats. They're used to making things work based on logic, and they can make the change. And so I've seen a huge change in them, which has been very, very, very exciting. And they're receptive to learning, and they're making adjustments. We said, even if you just have one person in your school, like one person on staff that understands it, and screeners are available online for free. So they don't even have to have a human doing it. It's like, this isn't a tax on your people. It's not going to cost more. It's going to cost you less because you're identifying. So the answer is that I think that it's working better in smaller districts. I don't think that larger districts are working as well, except for Missoula. And so that school district has really hooked in a lot. And there were people at the University of Montana that were on the task force. We had a dyslexia task force, state task force, and they were involved with that too. And so professors and then people in speech pathology, the director of that, and they have kind of seen more pushback. So what helps the laws work is lawsuits. So this is what is like, what's hard for people to understand. And this is what they're banking on as well, is because most Montanan people are working really hard for their living. They don't have time to get rid of their job and do legislation and sue the school district for their child. And so they don't. And but they're seeing it more. They're getting a lot of pushback. The people that are working like in independent literacy centers across the state, I work with all those people, and they are getting this feedback like, oh, well, there's a law, so how come we're not getting what we're supposed to get? And so the parents are like, starting to have a voice. And so then it can say, oh, there's a law, there's Senate bill or Senate law, I guess, I don't know why it's SB 140. It's in place. This says early intervention. This says early identification. And so the parents can go to the schools and advocate. And so that's what's kind of pushing the law. And then these, other advocates and people that are through literacy centers and all those kind of things are, oh, okay, this is real. Then the universities are also, Dylan, they are working on a ton of things with literacy. Missoula is, your work that you're doing right here, these kind of things, everything that comes through, it starts to, it catches a wave. So it like catches that wave because of all these things happening. Like I'm telling you, this momentum, you know, how it works, that I partnered with Boone Philanthropy, which is an organization for training teachers. And then we paired that money that he would give us with top 10 learning teachers tools. So going right back to the root cause, which is the deal, is training the teachers. So starting in January, I set up 15 pilot projects across the state that this was the criteria, is to have the teachers and the administrator on board. Because if the administrators aren't board, the teachers learn these things, they move from district to district, and they never are even allowed to apply it. So I'm super excited that we got that going, because now I have these pockets around the state, and then that will give us data to go back into the state and say, hey, let's do more of this, because the literacy is improving across the board, because we're changing the approach with the science of reading and curriculum. So it's not just a one-step thing, it's multi-stepped. And that's, I mean, that's really, really exciting, but it's very, very slow.
I think Kelly has all the right fires, you know, going 3 years out from this bill, and especially during COVID, this time of COVID. I think it's great that she's speaking, like going to school districts and being like, hey, this law passed, here are some tools, and now is able, through another organization, provide scholarships for teachers to get trained on that. I really think it's interesting that she talked about the lawsuits and through parents and maybe literacy groups, but I think it may be wise for her to, you know, start a legal fund and actually be that service for parents, or at least that's what I think. But I applaud Kelly a lot for tackling this issue, especially in this new era of public education here in Montana, which is a shift from making schools, you know, great to shifting it to private religious charter schools.